Mike Fisher reporting from home of the Dallas Cowboys, Frisco, Texas, where we've got breaking news, expected, but still big, and maybe personally exciting for a lot of Cowboy fans who root for Sean Lee. Leighton Vander Esch will be unavailable this weekend as the Eagles come to town. That, of course, was expected with the ankle. The idea that he may still play at some point this year. Certainly Leighton Vander Esch harbors that idea. It might take the Cowboys going to the playoffs to actually make that happen. Also, by the way, Wednesday practice notes, Ezekiel Elliott looked fine, still on the injury list, but was better than he was last week when he was limping around, clearly with the calf contusion. It is his plan to play Sunday against the Eagles in what is a pre-playoff game, of course. And as you know, the NFL has really smartly moved the Washington game against Carolina. Washington, by the way, with some issues. They can't keep their quarterback out of the strip club, and the owner doesn't seem very far behind. And he has his fun on his team plane, coming back from the American Country Music Awards or something. The Cowboys, by the way, no other team could really throw too many stones there, but for the grace of God, go all kinds of players and all kinds of coaches and all kinds of team executives in every city who have their fun, and you hope that that their fun doesn't intrude on the rights of others, and you hope that their fun doesn't intrude on the rules and the law. And Washington is having some problems right now in those areas. The Cowboys do not have those kind of problems at this time. They've got injury problems. Antoine Woods, the defensive tackle, and Xavier Woods, the safety. Neither one of them able to practice on Wednesday. But Sean Lee was going, blowing and going, as he always does. And now ready to start Sunday at AT&T Stadium in what, as we discussed with him today, might be his final home game as a Dallas Cowboy, period. Final home game as a pro football player, period. Not necessarily his final game in football. He's 34. I've got so many people that have told me this. You probably agree with this too. If it's not for the injury issues that plagued him year after year after year, most of them just fluky things, not injury-prone things, not made of glass things. It's fluky stuff. I'll never forget the game in Chicago where he's in a pile and somebody just comes down on his head and jams his neck. And I've never seen somebody come down on somebody's head before like that. If any player ever did that to somebody else's head, it would injure their neck. But nobody really does that. It wasn't on purpose. It was just a fluky deal. And here's another Sean Lee injury. So Lee has added up all those injuries in his head, and he's had the discussions with his lovely wife, really the last couple off seasons. And what he said today is, in short, I'm addicted to it. I love the game. I love this organization. And I love to play football. So is he going to be a coach someday? Yeah, and Jerry Jones will not let him get out of the building. I mean, unless he wants to go home to Pennsylvania, and I don't think he does, since he spends his off season on the other coast. I think that he loves this organization is a hint. This is where he's going to end up coaching someday, maybe next year. Mike McCarthy has already said, listen, I know he wants to be a coach someday, and I told him if he's that dumb that we need to talk, that I'll help him out. We'll work together. Sean Lee on the coaching staff would be outstanding, just because Sean Lee is outstanding in every single possible way. He is the most studious, this side of quarterbacks, I guess, the most studious player that I've ever been around. The most prepared player that I've ever been around. And obviously over the course of 30 years in Dallas and 40 years in the NFL, we've been around a few. By the way, speaking of our work here and my appreciation of your contributions, thank you for being a part of what we do here on the Fish Report. We appreciate your fellowship with us, and we appreciate that you subscribe to what we do and that you spread the word as well. Also, of course, on Twitter and Facebook at Fish Sports. So Sean Lee says, yeah, I talked this over with my wife last couple off seasons, and we talk about the pain that I go through, and probably she goes through, to get us through this. And then he says, and then I think about it, and I go back and think of that play I made in that game and think I could still do it, which you can. And I still love it, which he does. And then I go out on the practice field, and it's just, I just love it. I'm addicted to it. Someday he will have to go cold turkey from being addicted to playing, but obviously coaching is a way to taper off, less cold turkey if you're a coach. They don't get paid enough. They work ridiculous hours. You don't get very much acclaim unless you're in charge of something. And here's another thing. Source close to me telling me last night that unlike some players and unlike some coaches, Sean Lee is way too smart to say, let me be a defensive coordinator. Way too smart to get ahead of himself. He knows what he does not know. And I use the example with this person of Jason Witten, who never did back down and still hasn't. When somebody brings up, Jason Witten should be the head coach of the Cowboys, Jason Witten doesn't really say no to that. Like I always thought he should. He doesn't say yes, but he doesn't say no. I think Jason Witten enjoyed the flattery, even though that's suicidal. Jason Witten, and he's an idol in Tennessee, could probably go back there and get any job he wanted, but why take a job where you're likely doomed to fail? We all love Jason Witten. Jason Witten's never even coached anything more than his kids' Little League games. You got to coach. You have to learn to be a coach. Just because you're a great player and a fine person and a great leader doesn't mean you're a teacher. You have to, or in charge, like a principal. First you have to start in kindergarten. Even if you got a master's degree, if you've never taught before, you don't get to be the dean of students at Harvard. So watch Sean Lee. He'll take his time here. What my source told me is, he goes, you guys can all put him on your defensive coordinator list because the fans like it and it's something fun to talk about. He goes, he'll say, no, I want to be a linebacker coach. He'll say, I want to be an assistant linebacker coach. And then in 2 years, we'll have a conversation about the next thing. It's the right way for Sean Lee. And of course, he's always done everything around here the right way, except for getting injured. As I said, if not for the injuries, this is what people talk about all the time with Sean Lee to me, scouting people. He's a Hall of Famer. If he doesn't have that volume of injuries, Sean Lee is a Dallas Cowboy and he'd go into the Hall of Fame. That's how talented he was and is. That's how devoted he was and is. The questions about, is this your last game at home? Is this your last game? What about retirement? He says, I'll see how my body feels, but I'm not thinking about that now. And then he just gives a very Sean Lee answer. And it's why I've appreciated him over the years here, and I know you have too, even though you've probably gotten a little frustrated with the injury part of stuff. He goes, if you're playing football in a given week, you need to be so focused on your job and your opponent that you really don't have time for the sidebar stuff. I'm paraphrasing. The sidebar stuff being, it's Wednesday before NFL Week 16 in a playoff pre-playoff game. I'm thinking about the Eagles. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do next July. I'm thinking about Jalen Hurts. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do for my next career. I'm thinking about the Eagles' tight ends and formations and tendencies and trends. And of course, we've had a lot of fun with him when I talk to him all the time and talk about his intellect, because he really does have a unique knack for reading the play, for knowing what the other team's going to do almost before they know it. And he says, Fish, don't make too much out of my intellect, will you? And I go, why? What's wrong with being smart? Join the club. And he says, the more you talk about my intellect, the less people are going to think I'm an athlete. I'm a good athlete. And then we joke about how he was all conference in basketball, which he was, and a couple other guys were on that team in high school, all conference high school in basketball, and like a couple other guys on that team went to the NBA and stuff. So, he was in quite an elite group back in Pennsylvania. So he's an athlete, he's an intellect, and he's addicted. and he's going to try that to feed that addiction on Sunday at AT&T Stadium when the Eagles come to town. Thanks again for subscribing. Coming up, I promise you, we will get into the Ezekiel Elliott dollars and cents and trade and Jets with the fish. Out.